The vastness of space was silent, yet the tension in the Zarkan High Command was anything but. Supreme Admiral Korth stood tall, his emerald-scaled face twisted in a mix of irritation and curiosity as he observed the holographic display. A fleet of unidentified ships had just entered the outer reaches of the Zarkan Galactic Empire, an offense punishable by immediate annihilation. The Empire had stood undefeated for millennia, their military unmatched, their technology superior to all known species. And yet something about these ships was different. They were small, unimpressive by Zarkan standards, lacking the intimidating design of Imperial warships. Their hulls did not gleam with energy shielding, nor did they carry the unmistakable insignia of an established galactic power. These were, without a doubt, primitive vessels, the kind of outdated technology that struggling civilizations used before they were inevitably crushed beneath the might of the Empire. Admiral Korth scoffed. "Send a transmission," he ordered, his voice sharp. "Inform these newcomers that they are trespassing in Imperial space. They have one chance to surrender and offer tribute to the Zarkan Empire. If they resist, destroy them." The communication officers acted immediately, transmitting the standard demand for surrender. But instead of fear, instead of panicked pleas for mercy, something entirely unexpected happened. Laughter. Loud, unrestrained, genuine laughter echoed through the Imperial Command Center. The bridge crew exchanged bewildered glances. Admiral Korth's eyes narrowed as he turned back to the display. The humans, if that's what they were, had responded to their warning by laughing. Not nervous chuckles, not forced bravado. Actual amusement. As if the mighty Zarkan Empire was nothing more than a joke. Did they just laugh at us? One of the officers murmured, disbelief written all over his face. Admiral Korth clenched his jaw. "Send the message again. This time, make it clear. Surrender or be obliterated." The message was sent. The response. More laughter. This time, one of the human voices actually spoke through the transmission, the words laced with humor. "Oh man, this is hilarious. You guys actually think we're scared of you." Another voice chimed in, barely suppressing their amusement. "I can't believe this. They still use energy-based missile systems. That's adorable." The Zarkan officers bristled. Adorable. Had these humans lost their minds? Admiral Korth had heard many things in his lifetime. Pleas, cries, desperate negotiations. But never had an enemy found the Empire funny. His claws gripped the edge of the command console as he turned to his tactical officers. "Deploy the First Fleet. I want these creatures obliterated immediately." The Imperial warships surged forward, massive behemoths of destruction, armed with planet-cracking weaponry, designed to strike fear into the hearts of all who opposed them. The human ships, however, did not move. They remained eerily still, as if they had no intention of even defending themselves. "They're not raising shields," one of the Zarkan strategists noted, confusion evident in his voice. "They're not even powering up weapons." Admiral Korth sneered. "Then they will die like the fools they are. Fire at will." The command was given. The first wave of plasma torpedoes streaked across the void, heading directly for the human fleet. The Zarkan officers watched in anticipation, expecting a swift and brutal annihilation. But something impossible happened. The torpedoes, powerful enough to reduce an entire battleship to molten slag, vanished just before impact. Not detonated, not intercepted, simply gone. The room fell into stunned silence. Admiral Korth's claws dug deeper into the console. "What just happened?" he demanded. The weapons officer frantically examined the data, his reptilian fingers flying across the control panel. I don't know, sir. It's as if the torpedoes just ceased to exist." Laughter once again crackled over the communication channel. "Oh wow, you guys really went for it. That was cute. But seriously, you might want to update your tech. This stuff is, 1,000 years outdated." Admiral Korth's patience snapped. How dare you mock the Zarkan Empire? He bellowed, his tail thrashing in fury. We have ruled this galaxy for generations. Our fleet is the most powerful force known to. The human interrupted, still chuckling. Yeah, buddy. I'm sure you guys think you're the biggest, baddest warriors around. But we've already disabled your entire fleet, so maybe tone it down a bit. The Zarkan Command Center erupted into chaos. Officers frantically checked their systems, only to discover that every single Imperial warship in the fleet was now completely unresponsive. Weapons were offline. Shields were down. Even basic propulsion had been disabled without a single human shot being fired. Admiral Korth felt his throat tighten as the horrifying realization sank in. The humans hadn't come unprepared. They weren't arrogant fools stepping blindly into enemy territory. They had planned this, and they had won before the battle had even begun. How? Korth whispered, his voice barely audible. He could feel the fear creeping into his chest, a feeling he had never known before. The humans had neutralized his forces effortlessly. What kind of species were they? The answer came in the form of yet another amused voice from the human transmission. Listen, we'll make this easy for you guys. You can pretend this never happened. We'll leave, and you won't have to explain to your superiors how you got completely outclassed by some primitive species. The words stung like venom. Admiral Korth, a veteran of countless wars, a commander feared across the galaxy, had been outplayed, humiliated, and rendered powerless, all while his enemies laughed. For the first time in Zarkan history, an Imperial admiral found himself speechless. The humans had won, and they hadn't even tried. As the human fleet casually turned and disappeared into the void, leaving the mighty Zarkan Empire reeling in confusion and fear, one thing became painfully clear. The galaxy had just encountered a new force, one that didn't just win wars. They laughed while doing it. And that was perhaps the most terrifying thing of all. Admiral Korth's claws tapped against the cold metal of his command console, his expression dark with barely controlled fury. The humiliation from the last encounter still burned in his mind. But this time, he would not allow such disgrace to happen again. The high command of the Zarkan Empire had demanded an immediate response, one that would remind the galaxy of their dominance. He had assured them that the human so-called victory was nothing more than a trick, a momentary fluke that would be rectified with overwhelming force. Now, as he stood aboard the command bridge of the Wrath of Zarkan, the Empire's most powerful battleship, he knew there would be no mistakes. The humans would learn their place, and this time, there would be no laughter. The Empire had deployed 3 entire battle groups, a force so overwhelming that even the strongest civilizations would have surrendered at the mere sight of it. Thousands of warships formed an unbreakable wall of destruction, surrounding the region of space where the human fleet had last been detected. Every ship was armed with the most devastating weapons in the Empire's arsenal. The humans had mocked them before, but now they would be crushed under sheer firepower. Korth stared at the holographic display, watching as the human fleet reappeared on the sensors. They were still there, small, unimpressive, barely worth considering as a threat. And yet, the memory of their effortless disabling of his fleet haunted him. He forced the thought aside. This time, things would be different. Open a channel, Korth growled, his voice laced with contempt. His communication officer obeyed, and within seconds, the humans were on the line. Their response was immediate, and it was laughter. Again, Korth's fists clenched so tightly that his claws threatened to pierce his own palm. He had never, in all his years of battle, encountered an enemy that found him amusing. "Oh, you guys again," a cheerful human voice said, as if they were meeting an old friend. "Back for another round. All right, let's see what fancy toys you brought this time." Korth's patience shattered. "Silence, vermin. You mocked the Zarkan Empire at your own peril. This time, you will not escape. Surrender now, or we will erase your species from existence." There was a pause. For the first time, Korth hoped his words had struck fear into them. But then, another voice spoke, this one calm, almost bored. "You really don't get it, do you?" The human said. "This isn't a fight. This is just embarrassing." Before Korth could demand an explanation, everything went wrong at once. A warning siren blared across the command bridge. The displays flickered, and the massive fleet of warships under Korth's command froze in place. Every system, every weapon, every engine ceased functioning. The Wrath of Zarkon, a battleship the size of a small moon, drifted helplessly in space. Panic spread through the bridge like wildfire as officers scrambled to regain control, but nothing responded. "What's happening?" Korth roared, slamming his fist onto the console. The chief engineer's voice crackled through the comms, filled with disbelief. "Sir, we don't know. All primary systems are down. We have no control over our weapons or navigation." The human's voice returned, still as casual as before. "You're running some really old tech, you know that. I mean, we saw your security protocols and thought, no way, this has to be a joke. But nope. You guys actually run your entire military on this outdated garbage." There was another burst of laughter, followed by an exaggerated sigh. "Man, this is just sad." Korth's vision blurred with rage. This wasn't possible. It couldn't be happening. The Zarkon Empire was the greatest military force in the galaxy. There was no way these primitive creatures could just shut them down without firing a single shot. And yet, the proof was undeniable. His entire fleet, thousands of ships, the most powerful armada in known space, was now nothing more than a collection of floating debris. One of his officers, a younger commander who had once been fiercely loyal, turned to him, his scaled face pale with fear. "Admiral, they have complete control over us. We can't fight back. What do we do?" The bridge fell silent. Every officer, every warrior who had once stood proudly under the Zarkon banner now waited for an answer. But for the first time in his life, Admiral Korth had none. The human's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "So, here's the deal. You can sit there and think about your life choices while we leave. Or you can keep embarrassing yourselves. Up to you." The transmission ended. The human fleet, small, insignificant by appearance, but infinitely superior in reality, turned and left without a single concern. The Zarkon, once proud conquerors, were left powerless in the darkness of space. For the first time in the history of the Empire, fear crept into the hearts of its warriors. Not just fear of losing, but fear of how utterly helpless they had been against the humans. The mighty Zarkon had always believed they were unstoppable. But now, that belief was shattered. And the worst part, the humans hadn't even considered them a real threat. They had only laughed. Admiral Korth stood motionless on the command bridge of his flagship, his cold reptilian eyes staring blankly at the holographic display before him. His entire fleet, thousands of warships armed with the most advanced weaponry the Zarkon Empire had ever developed, now floated powerless in the void. Weapons were unresponsive. Shields were down. Propulsion was dead. And worst of all, it had all happened without a single shot being fired. The humans had not just defeated them, they had humiliated them. Korth's claws dug into the metal railing as the realization crashed over him. His forces had been rendered completely useless in less than a minute. And the humans? They had simply laughed and left. Silence filled the bridge, thick with disbelief and fear. His officers, once proud and unshakable, now stood with wide, terrified eyes. No one spoke, no one moved. They all knew the truth but were too afraid to say it out loud. The Zarkon Empire had never faced an enemy like this before. For centuries, they had crushed every civilization they encountered, expanding their rule with brute force and military superiority. Their technology had always been the most advanced, their fleets the strongest, their warriors the most feared. But now, everything they had believed in had been shattered. A sharp beeping sound broke the silence, signaling an incoming transmission. Korth turned toward his communications officer, who hesitated before pressing the button to accept. The moment the human's voice came through, Korth felt his muscles tense. "Hey, lizard guy. You still there? Man, that was... I don't even know what to say. That was embarrassing." The human laughed. Again. Korth clenched his jaw, his tail lashing against the floor in barely controlled rage. He had never in his life been mocked like this. The Zarkan Empire was supposed to inspire fear, not laughter. "Listen," the human continued, his tone casual, almost bored. "We could have wiped you out. Completely. No fleet, no empire, no more of this. We're the strongest nonsense you guys keep bragging about. But honestly, you're just not worth the effort." The word stung more than any weapon ever could. Not worth the effort. The mighty Zarkan fleet, feared across the galaxy, was nothing more than a waste of time to these humans. Korth's breathing grew heavier as fury boiled inside him. You dare insult the Zarkan Empire," he snarled. "You dare mock our strength." The human chuckled. Yeah. I mean, we just completely shut you down with zero effort. What strength are we talking about?" Korth's claws scraped against the console, leaving deep marks in the metal. "You have not won. This is not a defeat. We will recover from this. We will." The human cut him off with a sigh. "Dude, your fleet isn't just disabled. It's compromised forever. We've rewritten your systems so badly that even if you somehow fix your ships, we can turn them off again anytime we want." The bridge crew froze. Korth felt a chill run down his spine. They could do this again. At any time. One of his officers turned to him, his voice barely a whisper. "Admiral, we are at their mercy." The human's voice continued, completely unfazed by the panic now gripping the Zarkan officers. "Look, we're feeling generous today, so we're gonna let you go. But here's the deal. You don't ever come near human space again. In fact, you might want to rethink this whole galactic conquest thing. Because trust me, there are a lot of species out there that are way weaker than us, and even they give you trouble. I mean, seriously, how did you guys even build an empire with this trash tier tech?" More laughter. Korth's vision blurred with rage. He had fought countless battles, led invasions across entire star systems, crushed civilizations beneath his fleet's might. And now, he was being treated like an incompetent fool. He wanted to lash out, to fight back, to do something. But what could he do? His ships were lifeless, his fleet a floating graveyard of disabled war machines. He had no weapons, no way to attack, no chance of victory. He had lost before the battle had even begun. The weight of the truth pressed down on him like an unbreakable force. He had been outmatched on a level he could not even begin to understand. The human's voice softened slightly, but the amusement in his tone remained. "Anyway, we're leaving now. Hope you guys enjoy the show. And hey, try not to get yourselves into any more embarrassing situations, all right?" The transmission ended. The human fleet, small and unassuming, but infinitely more powerful, vanished into the void. The Zarkan officers stood in complete silence, their minds struggling to process what had just happened. For the first time in the Empire's history, they had been utterly, undeniably defeated. And not just defeated, humiliated. Admiral Korth stared at the dark screen before him, the laughter of the humans still echoing in his ears. He had believed, with every fiber of his being, that the Zarkan Empire was the most powerful force in the galaxy. But today, reality had crushed that arrogance. The humans had not even needed to fight. They had won effortlessly. The Zarkan Empire was no longer the apex predator of the stars. And the worst part, the humans had found it funny. The hum of the engines reverberated through the bridge of the Zarkan battleship Dominance as Admiral Korth stared out at the vast expanse of space. His fleet had gathered, each ship perfectly aligned in a formation so tight it looked like a single unstoppable weapon. The conquest of the humans was imminent, and Korth's claws twitched in anticipation. It had taken years to get this far, to build this armada, but it was finally time to crush the last obstacle standing between the Zarkan Empire and absolute control over the galaxy. Korth had always believed in the Empire's superiority, that nothing could stand in their way. They had defeated every other species, humbled their enemies with the overwhelming force of their technology, and expanded their rule across countless star systems. The humans, however, had been a thorn in their side. Their strange ways, their unexpected victories, and their unpredictable tactics had baffled the Zarkan for years. But now, with a fleet 10 times the size of the last, Korth was confident that no such surprises could happen again. "Admiral, the human fleet has been detected on the outskirts of our territory," the communications officer reported, breaking Korth's thoughts. "They've entered our range." Korth nodded, his eyes narrowing. The humans had been foolish enough to show up at the exact moment when the Zarkan Empire was at its strongest. Their arrogance would be their undoing. "Bring all weapons online. Prepare to engage. This ends today," Korth ordered, his voice cold with resolve. The battle began as Korth had predicted. The humans were vastly outnumbered, their fleet a tiny fraction of the Zarkan's might. Korth could practically taste the victory. His ships charged forward, energy shields flaring as they unleashed a devastating wave of firepower. The humans, as expected, attempted to dodge, but they were too few, too weak. One by one, Zarkan warships tore through the human fleet, reducing their ships to rubble with ease. Korth couldn't help but smile. This was how things were supposed to be. They were winning. But then something strange began to happen. The humans weren't retreating. They weren't fleeing in panic like all the others before them. Instead, they were coordinating, moving with precision, staying close to each other, and constantly shifting their formation. It was almost as if they knew exactly how the Zarkan ships would react. A flicker of doubt passed through Korth's mind. He dismissed it quickly. They were humans. No matter how clever they were still outclassed. However, just as Korth thought he had the upper hand, something unexpected occurred. One of the Zarkan battleships, a massive war machine, suddenly exploded from within. There were no signs of external damage, no missile impact or plasma blast. It was as if the ship had self-destructed, but the cause was still unclear. "What happened?" Korth bellowed, fury building in his chest. "Report." The engineer on duty, trembling, tapped away at his console. "Admiral, it's the human fleet. They've somehow infiltrated our systems. They're overriding our controls from within." Korth's eyes widened in disbelief. "That's impossible. How can they do this? Their technology is primitive compared to ours." But the evidence was undeniable. Another Zarkan ship fell silent, and then another, as the humans hacked into the fleet's systems one by one, disabling the Zarkan ships without ever firing a single shot. His ships, once the most powerful in the galaxy, were now falling apart under their own command. Korth's mind raced as panic began to creep into his thoughts. This was no longer just a battle. This was a total collapse. "Initiate emergency protocols," he ordered, but his own voice sounded weak, distant. The panic among the bridge crew was evident. Officers scrambled at their consoles, but nothing they did could reverse the damage. The humans were everywhere, infiltrating every single ship in the fleet, even as they continued their mysterious, coordinated assault. "Admiral, they've taken control of the entire fleet," the communications officer reported in a voice full of terror. "The humans are controlling us. We can't stop them." Korth felt the cold grip of fear tighten in his chest. For the first time in his life, he was powerless. His massive fleet, his greatest weapon, was now nothing more than a plaything for the humans. They had taken everything, without firing a single shot. It was as if the humans had always known exactly how to defeat the Zarkan Empire. The human leader's voice came over the comms, clear and calm. Well, Admiral Korth, it seems we've caught you in a bit of a bind. You know, I almost feel sorry for you, but then I remember the countless species you've crushed underfoot without a second thought. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to turn around and go home. We're not interested in fighting you. We're not interested in your empire. You're not our problem. But you'll be our problem if you keep pushing us. The arrogance, the audacity. Korth's claws dug into his palms, but he couldn't make his hands move. He wanted to scream, to rage, to somehow fight back. But it was clear now, this was over. The humans had somehow hacked his fleet, his weapons, his entire empire. They had defeated the Zarkan with nothing more than their superior understanding of technology. And in doing so, they had changed the entire course of galactic history. This is a new galactic order, Admiral, the human continued, as if speaking to a child. The days of conquest are over. You're not the top dog anymore. And you never will be again. Korth's heart pounded as he struggled to accept the reality before him. The Zarkan Empire, once the most feared military power in the galaxy, had just been reduced to nothing by a species so far beneath them that it seemed impossible. He had been so sure that they were invincible, so certain that no one could challenge their dominance. But now he realized with a sickening clarity that he had been wrong. The humans had not only defeated the Zarkan Empire, they had done so without firing a single shot. They had rendered the Zarkan a laughingstock, a shadow of their former glory. And with that, the galaxy was no longer theirs. The last thing Korth heard was the sound of the human leader's voice, cold and unyielding. Now, Admiral, go back to your people. Tell them the galaxy is no longer yours to conquer. It's ours. And with that, the Zarkan fleet was commandeered, turned around, and sent on its way back home. Its once unstoppable might now under the complete control of the humans. Korth could only stare into the void, realizing that the galaxy had just changed forever.